just make a quick little vlog, or you can make a little thing of my kale chips.
Yeah,
Kale
I want to start doing that for
kale chips.
a lot of different noises. I have a bunch of different ideas for that sort of thing.
It's so funny.
What do you want to talk about today?
I'm waiting.
What are you waiting for?
Your
The clap?
Okay, so that we can have an even more fun vlog from time to time, or a fun vlog reel. I'm in the vlog mode. Sorry,
Sure.
I just made a vlog. Well, in some ways, this is a vlog.
Content on the brain.
Content on the brain. Yeah, I know. So I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to tell me what you literally just shoot from the gut on all of this, what your perspective is.
Okay.
On these things. Because, you and I, even though we're parent and child, you're a male, I'm a female, and you definitely default to the logic.
Okay.
Whereas, and that's a masculine thing. And I default to intuition and feeling, which is a very feminine thing. With men, we would ask men, what do you think? Or how, what do you think about that? With women, you would more ask, how do you feel about that? That's just a natural opener. So I want to know what you think when I say these things. And this is fun stuff, especially for like our general audience will really appreciate this kind of conversation. So when I say to you, Sasquatch, some people say Sasquatch. What is your perspective on what I call Sasquatch? What do you think about Sasquatch?
Sasquatch is a really cool idea. It's a really cool character. I'm a big fan of Sasquatch as a character. I like his character arc. I like the Oregon arc. I like the Himalayan arc. I like all of the different variations, because you can find, if you actually look up cryptid. Yeah, Sasquatch and the Yeti are the same thing. They're the same. They're the same species,
aren't they? I didn't even associate that because I really haven't put a whole lot of thought into
it's actually
Sasquatch.
Fascinating. If you look up cryptid, you can find a cryptid map that pulls up all the things that people have supposedly seen.
Oh, I'm sure, and they're all associated,
all mapped. There is in every culture around the world a Sasquatch.
Yeah, there is.
Every culture, from every indigenous, you go to a different indigenous culture. These are cultures that have not seen each other before.
Right.
You ask them about, and if you get down to it, they all will tell you a different legend, and they'll all call a different name of a thing that looks identical to Sasquatch, which is really fascinating to me.
That is really fascinating. Some people call it Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe that this creature, it's an archetype, obviously, just what you said. Do you believe that this creature actually exists in another dimension?
I think everything exists in another dimension. That's to me is such I don't know. I think that there's two different ways we can look at that. Everything exists in simultaneous dimensions because dimensions are not something that is a physical origin. That's not a really good way of trying to say what it is that I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is it's anything that you can conceive of is probably a reality if we are to believe in multiple universe theory. Because multiple universe theory would instate that simply, it's a big mind universe comparison. So it kind of falls along the same sort of lines as Gnostic Christianity, for example, which believes that mind is God, basically. It's God is self-realizing and mind is God. So I look at multiple universe theory as kind of fitting into very similar lines. It's almost as though quantum physics has found a thing that kind of leads you closer to the whole mind is God realization, because if you conceive of something, then your conception of it probably means that it's real. And actually, they've put this to the test.
Exists.
They've put this to the test. If you look up, I think it's Robert Bigelow. I think he's the guy who did.
Yes, I've researched him.
Yeah, I think it's Robert Bigelow, if I'm not mistaken, is the guy who did the. He did the study on. Or he funded it. He's a multi-millionaire. Hopefully this is the right guy that I'm thinking of, because I've done so much research on all of this UFO sort of stuff.
So don't say anything else yet, because
I know, but I have to connect to this story. So Robert Bigelow is like a multimillionaire, and he basically became that because he was fascinated with UFOs as a kid, and he wanted to essentially get to a point. At first, I think he was trying to be like an aerospace engineer, but eventually what he decided was it was more effective just to like make a lot of money and then put that money into funding his own like space endeavors. So that's basically what he did. He became like, I think he's a billionaire at this point, and he basically has like his own space program that he runs that has basically people look for like UFOs. So he helped fund a study that was done by the CIA. This was the Army. So this was connected to the UFO, the whole UFO thing that started coming out a few years ago, where they were like,
we talked about that in our early episodes.
We did, exactly. So he was that guy where they were like, we caught all these UFOs. This was the Navy saying this, and now we're like putting out all this footage, and it became like a huge story, and it was like one of the first times that UFOs like got widely reported on by like the New York Times and stuff. And then it turned out, if you did the research and went deeper, that actually the original thing wasn't on UFOs at all. It was all a study done by Robert Bigelow and a bunch of his friends and some guys who were in the Army about Skinwalker Ranch, and they were actually studying paranormal stuff.
This.
And so basically what they found, if you read the study, it's really interesting. They found this whole mind is God. If you can conceive of it, it's real type of situation. I'm making huge leaps in what it is that I'm taking from that. But basically the actual study found like a lot of this paranormal stuff, when they started to research it really heavily, they would see it appear on Skinwalker Ranch. So that like they would start to see like UFOs, and they would start to see like one of them was like El Chupacabra or something like that. They started to see all of these things show up on the ranch.
Chupacabra thing. I do.
And then it was so much so to the point of where like when like one of the main guys in the Army who was kind of the intelligence side of it, he had essentially brought it to the government and basically persuaded them to give them a bunch of additional money to support this. He and I think Robert Bigelow, they each told stories of like driving home, and they would see like weird like energy portals like over their house, and they would see like strange stuff around those portals. And so when I hear about stuff like that, it's like, to me, what I take away from that is that because they started to put themselves so heavily into these worlds, their mind started to project outwards a reality that matched what it was that they were searching for, which I think is sort of the order of how universe works. We tend to think it's like there's information externally and we receive it internally. But I think in reality, what more so happens, especially when you like delve into these things that are rarer, more improbable, is it's like you're kind of projecting them outwards from you, and then they just kind of exist.
You know, I actually, and I'm going to again speak with the feminine of I do feel that is accurate. That is definitely something that I have perceived as well. Now, since we're in the Sasquatch, Bigfoot, Yeti subject, and you just gave a key of every culture has this archetype, and everybody just sees it differently, and none of them have compared. But now that we're in a higher frequency as a collective consciousness, we have humans that are researchers that have done that work. Now, let me ask you this, because this is in a similar genre, I guess I could say, as that. What do you think of Thoth, the Atlantean?
Yeah, that's an interesting question.
Because that's the same thing. He shows up in every culture under a lot of different names.
It's not exactly the same thing, because the idea that Thoth is the reincarnation of all of these beings, the idea of Thoth kind of being like the original entity, is not that's something that came up more recently, because Thoth by name is a more recent entity. And this is not Thoth, because if you look at like Egyptian gods, Thoth the Egyptian god, which is where it originally came from, is a very different being than Thoth the Atlantean. From essentially the Enlightenment. So this is all the way in like the 1800s that Thoth starts to come up.
I mean, it said that in Atlantis, he literally lived 16,000 years, literally, and he created the chamber, the sarcophagus, that he literally can let go of an avatar, a human body, once it wears out, retain his consciousness and go into a brand new, fully adult avatar, another body.
Mm-hmm.
And, as you know, I've been like diving into this more in the last few years, more and more, and listening to theorists like Billy Carson and Robert Edward Grant, and there's many, many others. But those are the ones who are currently like out there on YouTube, on podcasts, talking about their research on reading the interpretations of the Emerald in the Sumerian tablets, which Thoth is written in. Now, I have listened to an audio version a couple of times of the interpretations of the Emerald tablets, not the Sumerian, but the Emerald. And it's said that Thoth had multiple incarnations in multiple cultures, and that there is actual physical proof of this. But then there are channels, transmedium channels, who have claimed to, or who say when they're asked to channel Thoth. And I've listened to a couple of these broadcasts, and do I know if they're authentic? I don't have proof, but yet it's interesting because when the so-called energy or consciousness of Thoth is channeled by the mediums, it's a similar thing that I've heard from several transmedium channels, where his energy is consciousness, and he does identify as I and as a he, as masculine. He says, the information that I left for humanity isn't actually in the third dimensional physical realm that you are currently in. The information that I channeled is in a different dimension. It's in a higher frequency, because when I lived on the planet in all of these different incarnations, it was a higher frequency. It was different, not better or worse than the one that you are in, just different. So you're not going to find the physical evidence in 3D that you are looking for in the frequency that you are in now of the evidence of my existence. Now, another interesting thing, because you were talking about, universe as thought, God as thought. The word thought is said to have come out of the name Thoth.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. I don't know the etymology.
I find that fascinating that, again, there is a concept, there is a thought. Where does the thought come from? It comes from all that is, oneness, isness. It does create dimensions and realities. Thought does this, and then the word creates it, and then intention, which creates action, creates this. So it makes me wonder, Thoth as this entity, this person, an ET, a human, if he really existed, does he exist for us now? Because there's only now. All experiences are parallel. They're all simultaneous. Is this a being that we in the, maybe perhaps going back to the 19th century, because the person, the human that says that Thoth literally physically appeared to him, and I can't remember, I want to say Zachariah Ascension. And if you're listening to this, do the research and fact check me, please. It said that Zachariah Ascension claims that Thoth came to him physically, in a physical visitation. And this, I know. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And people are, of course, very skeptical of that. And they say that he literally gave him the emerald tablets, as if this is Moses going up on top of the mount to get the 10 commandments based on tablets. But according to the transmedium channels, that is inaccurate. That there were that there was an actual tablets, because according to the transmedium channels, Thoth never actually carved any symbols in stone. He says it wasn't like that in those timelines where he exists, and that this is understandably a human desire to make him human as we know human to be in our current third dimensional reality, and that he doesn't exist in this third dimensional reality. According to the transmedium channels, he only exists for us in thought, because we are always looking for a demigod or a god outside of us.
I would say that's very accurate.
That's what the channels have said.
I think it's one of those questions where it's like, what do you want? Like, what do you want? What does Thoth give to you? Right? Like, this is literally why God as a concept exists. This is why Jesus exists. This is why all this stuff exists. What does it give to you? Right? Like, does it actually serve you at all to spend all of this time wondering if, like, Thoth was a real person who walked on this planet? You're literally never going to know. It doesn't.
Not until you leave your body.
It doesn't, and even then, maybe you still won't know. You have no idea. It's like there is no.
I have
like,
a feeling all of that knowledge comes back.
I don't think that, from my experience, you don't care when you leave. There is no concept of thinking about, like, oh yeah, I was wondering when I was human what that Thoth guy was up to. Like, there's none of that. That's not even a thing. Like, you're like a cosmic megazord flying around going, brop, and like universes come out of your mouth and you're like, brop.
I will tell you, from having more out-of-body experiences that I have an actual count of, and from having a couple of near-death experiences, when I leave this body, when I am not in this body, that is definitely not what I'm thinking of. I am not thinking of, that's who Thoth was or is. I'm not thinking about any of that. I'm thinking about my own experience, my own life, my own universe, all of the out of bodies and all of the near deaths that I've experienced. I'm not even thinking about God.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even thinking about universe, source. I didn't even think about that. The reality of I'm the creator of all of this is the first thing that comes to me in my psychedelic experiences. It's exactly the same as the NDEs and the OBEs. It is literally, I'm creating all of this, and how silly my ego is. And I need to love myself more so that I can get more out of this experience, because I created this experience and continue to create this experience so that I can learn more about myself. And that's what I think. That's what occurs to me when I'm in those metaphysical experiences.
I think that people waste a lot of time. Well, maybe it's not a waste for you. I guess it all depends on what you want. Like, if you want to, like, go out there and create, like, a bunch of lore about, Sasquatch or Thoth or whatever, like, that's fine. That's cool. It sounds like a fun way to spend your time. I feel like I've spent my time learning a lot about that stuff. So
I feel like it's people who possibly just get bored and they're looking for something more than the now.
Yeah. I'm sure. I mean, I think. Isn't that why everyone does everything? Like, that's the whole reason why everything exists. That's why I'm able to look at it like, I see that guy was Zachariah, some ridiculous name. That is
Zachariah
a ridiculous name. That name sounds
I'll find it. I'll find the origin when we're done.
Straight up cult leader is the vibes that name gives me.
I don't think he was. But...
He has the exact same backstory as Joseph Smith of the Mormons.
Oh, Joseph Smith.
He has the exact same backstory, this Zachariah guy. It's, this mega entity gifted me these writings, and the writings say this stuff. He was just one step away from having a commune,
I would say that it's clearly very egocentric. I
think everything that has to do with, like, I know when this happened, and because if we talk about what we just talked about with multiple universe theory, that's literally just someone picking their favorite one and being like, this is the one. And then you're going to expect everyone else to be like, yeah, no, I like that one a lot too, you know?
But they're all the one.
Yeah,
every universe is the one.
But they are also not the one, because they are also all infinitely segmented and split into multi-differences.
They are, and it's really fun.
It's a minutiae of difference, and it's also all simultaneous. So you're absolutely right.
It
but
is
also,
all one, but it isn't.
when you have people who spend so much time, like, trying to essentially build their own religion out of, because really the only difference between religion and story is when you claim that story is fact. So essentially when you have, that's why, like, most countries become religious after a while. People have compared, I've heard a great comparison before. It was the United States government and this applies to most governments. The United States government and all of its practices have replaced Christianity as the primary religion.
I've
country.
I've heard this before.
Yeah, because we have
times.
like ritualistic practices like the 4th of July, and we like do the Pledge of Allegiance, and it's akin to it's akin to basically like, you know, the Sabbath, or like being there for like prayer on Sundays or whatever. It's like all the same thing, you know?
Oh, and now the new Juneteenth.
And then you have like a story that you're supposed to believe as an American, and like that story infills you with patriotism. And
of course it does, because Black Lives Matter, don't you know?
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I'm going
to be northern Minnesota about that. Don't you know?
We're in a very interesting time now where it's like a lot of the like main story of the country is starting to crumble, and so people are kind of like, you know, they're like forming essentially their own stories a lot more, which I think is a sign of a country that is slowly being rebuilt into something different.
I feel this as well.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you. Okay. This is a fun one. I'm picking this for you, but it actually goes in total alignment with Sas or Sasquatch, Bigfoot, Yeti. Now we have Thoth the Atlantean, Thoth the Egyptian, Thoth the Greek god. Thoth the Roman god, Thoth the... Now we're going to go into this. This is a fun one for you. And we've talked about this before multiple times. Do you believe that Tolkien channeled Middle Earth in The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit from an actual dimension, from a true reality, and that he actually remembered it? Or was living in it in a higher realm simultaneously while he was authoring?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think he may not have been conscious in the body of the fact that was happening, but yeah, in my view of the universe, I think that is kind of how it all works. I think if anyone's ever seen the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once, that movie that's such a good way of like explaining it. But yeah, I think that in our universe, we are all living simultaneous parallels. I think that no idea comes out of nothing. I don't think anything is like created like that. If it was, then it would have been created all at once, which is why everything is simultaneous. Because originally there had to have been a nothing to create a something. There also had to have been something for nothing to exist. So it's like, you can't at this point where we are pinpoint, like we can't actually think of death. You know, as humans, we have this sort of idea of death, and it's when like the body dies, but it's not the real death. We know that. And we also understand that there is this really hard, weird thing that happens when we try to imagine nothingness. Like when you try to think of what nothingness is, your brain just kind of goes, ugh, and then it just resets.
Oh, no, I tried to do that when I was a child. It actually physically hurt my brain.
Yeah.
It hurt. I would feel a pain going down my spine, like an ache. Like, it was so crazy. What I truly feel, and I'm always open for shifts and changes on this, but what I truly feel is that, like Tolkien with Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, like Rowling with Harry Potter, I truly feel that these are other dimensional realities that these people as souls are living in and have been able to tap into them because this realm has had a certain level of pain for them that they have been wanting to escape from. And they've literally just had easy access to those dimensions. And they were able to channel it and then through their imagination really tap into a lot of those incredible details. I really feel and believe, this is just my belief system, I truly believe that these people who authored these books have this incredible ability to use that in order to show us as humanity, and that's why they've been so successful in their books and why so many people have used these as a tool to tap their imaginations in even more, that these kind of authors, these kind of writers, they are not only inspirers, but they're what's the right word? Like instigators? I don't even know if that's the correct word. They are here to...
Why not just generators?
Generators, that's a good word.
Because they are generating.
They are generating, and they are like an aid They're like an aid for humanity to rise up out of the ego and come into a different way of creating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that everyone who is a creative serves like a really interesting path. I'm about to start, I can feel it coming on. I'm about to start diving into human design here. That's why all the like generators and all that stuff is coming up.
Well, we were introduced to human design in 2015. Do you remember that?
No, not at all.
Mm-hmm. By that guy that I dated very briefly. He brought in human design. You were a senior in high school, and we did your human design because you're a manifesting generator, as I am, as Nana is.
That's what most people are in the world. It's like 70% of people are manifesting
generators. Is that what
generators.
It says now? Because at the time in 2015, it was put out on the internet as the newest of the human design blueprints and the rarest. But I will tell you that I have talked with more people who have just gotten interested in human design, and almost all of them are manifesting generators. Mm-hmm. And the manifesting generator prototype is supposedly kind of superhuman.
Yeah, it's about responding rather than instigating.
What is it that you are now getting kind of sparked about human design?
It just keeps popping up, and every time something pops up, see, this is how I know that manifesting generator is something that works for me. So manifesting generator is all, and basically I'll preface this with saying the reason why I even brought this up to begin with is because I think that there are, and I haven't studied what they would fall into. I don't know if the human design template is at all accurate. I haven't studied it enough, but it is something that I believe the basic premise of human design is, which is that there are different types of people who come into the world with different ways to create. And those ways of creation are kind of like, they're like templates. So like people can come into the world and like find the ability to create things in a way that works better for them based on just, I would suppose, predetermined terms.
Well, what it is it's, okay, so these bodies, obviously, they are organic mechanisms. They are machines that we choose before we come in. We choose our parents. We choose our genetics. We choose all of that on a spiritual level as consciousness in order to experience the aspects of ourselves that we desire to experience. How I saw human design when it was presented to me in 2015, and I'd never heard of it before, it was still rather new then. What I saw about it is there were 4 original blueprints. They're just the blueprints for the Homo sapient body. And because these bodies are hybrids of the original humans. And it started with manifestor, generator, projector, and the R one. I can't remember. Reflector.
It's still the same.
It's still the same. And then manifesting generator was channeled many years after that by one guy.
There are multiple subtypes now, and manifesting generator is a subtype of manifestor.
Yes. So manifesting generator was always a subtype of manifestor. So you and I are manifesting generators. Cayenne is a generator. Mars is a projector. Your father is a projector.
Interesting.
Yep.
Yes.
I have all that memorized.
I think the rarest one is supposed to be reflector. I think reflector is like 1% of the world. Or something
I have
like that.
not met a reflector yet. And from what the small amount of diving into each one of those, because I did all that. And then, of course, whoever I was in a relationship with in 2015, I also did his as well. I have a tendency to attract manifestors and generators, but not manifesting generators. I have a tendency to not get along with projectors.
Interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't really know anything. I haven't studied them so in depth.
So it will show you, and it aligns. So it's the human design system also aligns with Ayurvedic medicine, with Chinese medicine, with the meridians, with the nadis, the energetic channels, with the chakras, with all medicinal systems, of course, except allopathic, which doesn't really deal with any of that. Allopathic just deals with the symptoms. So in my manifesting generator human design chart, I have an open throat. I'm remembering that you also have an open throat. So the throat chakra is very dominant. I also have my power center is kidneys and adrenals, which is why I have the level of energy that I have. I can move my body very quickly and adapt it to multiple situations. Don't remember. I'm almost thinking that your power center is your spleen. And yes, and you have to pay a lot of money to find out more in depth about that. Now my twin Sonia and I, we are both manifesting generators, and we have almost exactly the same power points in our bodies, except that there's like 2 aspects that are completely flipped opposite of each other, but the rest is exactly the same. And I dived into the system enough for probably about 2 years without paying anything. Again, it's really expensive, which I'm always just like, ding, 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 red light.
Yeah,
on.
absolutely.
Red flag, red flag.
100%.
I dived into it enough using my astrology. Oh, and it also incorporates astrology, numerology, pretty much everything. Chinese astrology, everything. Every system that is spiritual and focuses on the whole being, it incorporates. And I basically used the level of knowledge that I had in those 2 years to apply it to that. And then I allowed my intuition to do the rest. And I figured out enough to be able to understand. It's a flow chart. It's a flow chart. It'll show you sacred geometry spots in the body on your chart, and it will show you the chi pattern, the flow pattern of the chi or the prana in your body. And it's obviously very technical. And I feel like, I mean, it's not really well known even now in 2023.
It's getting a lot more popular. I've seen a lot of kids
gotten more popular,
about it.
but it's a very specialized niche in the spiritual metaphysical world. Not everybody who is in a metaphysical consciousness is even aware of it. I've asked around.
I mean, I don't really ever, usually when I'm like learning about something like that, I will honestly, yeah, I guess let my intuition, that's a good way of putting it. I guess I'll usually just let my intuition fill in, or just like take me. I'll usually end up creating like my own viewpoint pretty quickly off of something.
Yeah.
And I guess part of the reason for that is because there are some times where it's like I'll read something and it's just not like, it's not the angle that I can feel would really like help me apply it the best, but I can think of an analogous way to like approach it that would make sense and deliver the same information. So, for example, with astrology, I found a lot of ways to explain astrology that were different from the ways that I heard a lot of astrologers talking about it, but essentially saying the same things. I'm struggling to think of an example right now, but I definitely will.
Yeah, what I love about
unique.
tropical and Vedic astrology, because I have dabbled in Vedic astrology. It's a completely different system, but I love all the varieties of systems. I've barely dabbled into Mayan astrology, but it's still very fascinating. I've dabbled in Chinese astrology. They're all different, yet they all connect and correlate. And I feel like, we as humans, we need a lot of different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
And all perspectives are valid. Human design, it works for some people.
Mm-hmm.
I found really trying to dive into it without paying the exorbitant amount of money that was being charged to just learn it or to go see somebody to interpret it for you. I just found that I didn't feel it in my body like, yeah, I really need this. I already have so many spiritual tools in my toolbox. So I just got to where I could get with it. And then I said, okay, I'm going to step out and let this be what it is. And if it comes in again, which is what I do with any spiritual tool, if this comes in again and if it's handed to me, I'm meant to use it.
Mm-hmm.
Every single tool that I use to help myself to raise my awareness and to help others raise their awareness and to help myself heal and help others heal was just handed to me. And I always look at that as that is a way that all that is says this, use these on your path to self-awareness, to higher consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
But, back to, because I know we're almost done here, back to the questions. And I want to do this again because there's so many questions to ask. And you always have really wonderful perspectives that I love listening to and I love learning about, because your perspectives a lot of the time are very different than mine. They inspire me and they always help me to feel like I'm more enlightened.
Thank you.
You know, they do, because they're interesting. Just, I really like getting your siblings' perspectives as well. It's just they don't like to dive deep into these subjects like you do. Doesn't mean that they won't someday. It's just that that's not where they're at now. These are the subjects that I used to talk about with Nana when I was growing up. My brother and sister and I, we would ask her about life on other planets. We would ask her about Bigfoot. A big thing in the 70s, because of this show called In Search of, which I've mentioned before, that was hosted by Leonard Nimoy, who was the original Spock on Star Trek. Mr. Aries, Leonard Nimoy, he was an Aries. They had all of, In Search of Bigfoot, In Search of the Loch Ness Monster. You need to look that one up. That one is just, people have supposed pictures of it.
Yeah.
In Search of UFOs, In Search of fairies, In Search of, ghosts, spirits, all of that. And I mean, for another episode, it'd be really great to get into that. I mean, I already know and have so much experience with ghosts, displaced spirits, poltergeists.
Yeah.
And people love to get freaked out about that. And I say loved to get freaked out about that because people love to be scared. Humans love to be scared so that you can really experience the ridiculousness of fear. Again, it's all necessary for our growth. And if we were always light, how boring it gets to be that way.
Thank you so much to everyone who listened to this week's episode of the podcast. Feel free to check us out on Instagram at One Long Conversation to get some updates on our future episodes, our future content. You can also follow us on Patreon and become a member. We have a lot of interesting and awesome perks and cool ways to connect with us and our community that we're forming there. So go over to Patreon at One Long Conversation, and you'll find us there. We also have these episodes going out on YouTube now. So if you go to YouTube, yet again, at One Long Conversation, you will find video versions of these episodes. So yeah, thank you so much. We'll see you next time.